Hey guys, Mr. Groh again. We're working on the next problem on our sheet, which is number 5, where a submarine is docking the stationary black rock ship. Now, if you're not familiar with Lost, then you have no clue where the black rock ship is, but it comes in Lost, and they get dynamite from it and all that fun stuff. But anyway, the sub sights the ship initially at an angle of elevation of 30 degrees. Then moves forward 120 meters and sights the ship at an angle of elevation of 40 degrees. Assuming the sub did not rise or sink during the 120 meters, how deep is the sub? Okay. So you definitely want to make sure you do this problem before you do the next problem, because the next problem uses the same types of operations in it. However, it's a little trickier. So we got our sub down here. We got water up at the top. You can draw whatever you want. So the sub sees the ship initially at an angle of elevation of 30 degrees. It moves forward 120 meters and then looks back up, and now the ship is at 40 degrees angle of elevation. This is a little bit steeper than 40 degrees, but it's got the right idea. Ship should be more over like here. But one way or the other, what we want to know is how deep is the sub. So let's let that be y. It's vertical, cool. And we need another little spot here, so this is going to be x. Now if you look back at the other problem, we got the same thing happening with our hypotenuse. It's changing. However, our opposites, our y's, are going to be the same. So we're still sticking with tangent because we got opposite and adjacent. So let's just write our equation down and see what happens. So tangent of 30 equals our opposite over our adjacent. So y over, now here's the part that's a little tricky. It's not really 120. 120 is just this part. X is just this part. So the whole thing is going to be 120 plus x. Alright, so we got that. Our other equation off of the 40 degrees is going to be the tangent of 40 equals, well, opposite y over adjacent, which is x. A little bit easier equation to work with. So really you have two equations again, and we got two variables, just like we did in the last problem. So we need to solve for a variable and plug it in, and it really doesn't matter. I'd probably stay away from this x because that's the most nested one. I can solve for y here or y here. I'm going to pick this y because it's the easiest variable in the whole set to solve for. So just multiply by x. So you get y equals x tangent of 40. Now, anytime you do substitution, you're going to take that piece and plug it in for what y is in the other equation. So you got tangent of 30 equals y, almost left it be, y, which is really the x tangent 40 over 120 plus x. Alright, so now this piece here, what a lot of people like to think of here, if you put a 1 on the bottom, think cross multiplication, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to multiply both sides by 120 plus x. So it brings it over here. So 120 plus x times the tangent 30 equals x tangent 40. Now the problem is I got x's on both sides, I got this parentheses, so we're going to distribute. And again, at any time, if you ever don't understand a step that I'm doing here, pause it, rewind it, replay. And this is the best part about these videos, is you can go back and see what happened, see what that step was. So let's distribute. 120 tangent 30 plus x tangent 30 equals x tangent 40. Let me make sure that everything's still on the screen here and I'm not running you guys off in the middle of nowhere. Alright, now the problem is I'm running out of space here. So you may have to go back and see what's going on, because I am going to go, well, let's see here, where do I want to go with this? Don't have a lot of board. Alright, I'm going to have to start back up at the top. So the big deal here is you got x's on both sides of the equation, so we need to bring them to the other side of the equation. So you can always reverse to come back to here. Don't want to get rid of my picture. So leave that be y. So I'm going to bring this to the other side. So the 120 tan 30 stays put. Equals, and then we got x tangent 30. So this x tan 40 minus this x tan 30. Wow, sorry about this space here, guys. So, but the big thing here is you can't really add these together all that well because the tan 40 and the tan 30, and please don't try to add them and say tangent 70. It doesn't work that way. But what we can do is we can factor an x out of both of these, and that's the trickiest step here if you ask me. But you're going to be doing this kind of stuff a lot in the future. So we'll leave the left side alone, try to give myself more space. 120 tan 30 equals, we're factoring the x out of these, x tan 40 minus tangent 30. Alright, so now we got x kind of isolated. It still has this tangent 40 minus tangent 30 that's attached to it, but I really can divide both sides by tangent 40 minus tangent 30. So, in the end, your x value when you divide it on both sides, these are going to cancel, leaving you with x to be this wonderful bit of trigonometry right here, which you can just plug in your calculator. Big thing you want to make sure you do is put parentheses around your denominator, because that's subtraction. When you perform that operation, you should get x to be, what am I going to add here? 264.688. So here, let's write that in there. Now the only problem is we kind of solved for the wrong variable first. If you had solved for x and then plugged that in, we would have y left over, because y is what the problem is asking for. We want to know how deep the sub is. So what we have to go back to is one of the equations that I have erased. Now you can rewind it back to see what that was, but at one point in our excursion here, we wrote down that y equals x tangent 40. And when you plug in what your x is and multiply it by tangent 40, you're going to get your y value to end up being 222. So y equals 222 it's 0.99, which is going to round to basically 0.10 if you'd like to, meters, which is a respectable sub depth, I would think. Not 100% sure. I made the problem up myself. If you have any questions, rewind and review. Thanks, guys.